You know what the definition of a harlequin is? A harlequin is someone who will kick your ass if you don't go see this movie. Also someone who does a half-baked makeup job for a video. Okay, so I know I mainly talk about Star Trek on this channel, so some of you may be surprised that I'm a huge Harley Quinn fan. Like, she is quite literally one of my favorite characters of all time. Which is why I was so pumped to see Birds of Prey, or The Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Or I guess Harley Quinn Birds of Prey is what they're calling it now in an effort to try and boost the box office of this thing because you apparently all didn't go out and see it. And I gotta say, it honestly really bums me out because this movie is such a wonderful film that we rarely get to see made today, especially in superhero films. I mean, for all the talk of Joker being this real movie that snuck itself into the studio system when it really was just a pseudo remake of a Martin Scorsese film that actually almost hilariously beat an actual Scorsese film at the Oscars, Birds of Prey is actually something that feels fresh. Sure, it's riffing on the Deadpool formula, but it takes what works in those films and twists it and manipulates it enough to make it really feel like a Harley Quinn movie, something unique to her. And because this is a great Harley Quinn movie that also happens to have the Birds of Prey in it, who are also really cool characters. So I just wanted to make this brief video to tell all of you why you need to see this movie. This movie is about Harley Quinn and what makes her such a powerful character. Like I said before, Harley Quinn is one of my favorite characters of all time for numerous reasons. She's a character that on many levels feels incredibly relatable and real, especially when you look at what her character actually is and not the superficial cultural understanding of what her character is that mostly comes from the film Suicide Squad, which was a terrible representation of Harley Quinn, and don't even get me started on that. She's a character that is defined by one characteristic, empathy, and it's something that is both her biggest asset and her biggest flaw. She's a therapist able to understand and read people instantaneously, and it's an achievement that also showcases her incredible intelligence and competence. Yet it's also this deep empathy that causes her to fall in love with the Joker, a man who so clearly manipulates her for his own ends. Yet even within a few episodes of her first appearance on Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn already showcased her strength of character and independence, pushing back against the Joker's abuse, never allowing herself to be fully defined by it, yet still realistically affected by it. And numerous times she tries to escape her cage of the Joker, sometimes succeeding in gaining independence and other times failing based on which episode or which continuity you're following in the comics, movies, or TV shows. And that's something that's really, really relatable to a lot of people who have been in abusive relationships. She's a character that both within the DC universe and as a fictional character that has been defined by her relationship to Joker. And her best arcs have always been about her reconciling with how to define herself separate from him. All of these aspects of Harley are what Birds of Prey gets right to a T. The whole story is about her trying to figure out who she is outside of her relationship with the Joker. And I hated Suicide Squad, as I mentioned before, especially for how it framed Harley and Joker's relationship as a good thing. That this abusive relationship was somehow something to aspire to and was in no way toxic, despite the fact that he literally dumps her in a toxic vat within that movie. Yet the movie still frames it as a positive, healthy relationship that we should all want to achieve. It was honestly super gross and was clearly written by a dude who had never understood abusive relationships, at least from the perspective of a woman, and who had only had 6 weeks to write the script anyways. This isn't an attack against David Ayer necessarily, because I do like some of his other films, but just that he did not have enough time to put in the proper research and wait to give it to Harley Quinn in that film, and it honestly shows, especially with how the camera frames her in many scenes as this sex object, something to be goggled at. Even though Margot Robbie in that movie was actually very good. But the Birds of Prey film actually takes that depiction of Harley and uses it to its advantage, showcasing us a Harley that has been so encapsulated by the Joker that to suddenly find herself without him completely robs her of a sense of self. This film, which was directed by a woman, written by a woman, and produced by Margot Robbie herself, is a wonderful analysis of abusive relationships, but also can become the perfect breakup film for anyone leaving a significant other, even if that relationship was healthy overall. Yet, while Harley as a character searches for her own identity, almost every part of Harley Quinn that I love gets a moment to shine in this film. She breaks the fourth wall, there are numerous moments where she intelligently psychoanalyzes another character, using her ability to deftly read other characters to her benefit. She's shown to be intelligent and independent at numerous points, yet crazy and madcap to the nth degree. I mean, there's a whole sequence in the film set up around the fact that Harley Quinn really wants to eat an egg sandwich. And by the way, that egg sandwich is actually shot in the same exact way that Harley Quinn was shot in the previous movie Suicide Squad, showcasing how in that film, Harley Quinn was just treated as a piece of meat, a piece of food. And it's a great commentary on how the character Harley Quinn was treated by Suicide Squad and in comics and in culture in general, and how women in film are treated in culture in general by the male gaze, which is an actual film term that I've talked about in other videos, so if you're curious about that, go check them out in my other videos. Speaking of Harley Quinn though, the tone of this movie is absolutely pitch perfect. Like Deadpool, it's definitely gory and gruesome mixed with insane madcap, fourth wall breaking comedy. Yet, this film somehow also manages to make it much darker and grounded, mixing that zany comedy with truly sadistic and uncomfortably realistic scenes. And nothing more encapsulates that ethos than Ian McGregor's portrayal as the villain Black Mask, which is easily one of the best, if not the best, comic book villain performance of the past decade.
Right.
McGregor is clearly chewing up the entire scenery and would almost have completely stolen the movie with his performance if not for Margot Robbie's amazing Harley Quinn. He's charismatic and funny, yet deeply disturbing. What I love about him most is that he's not a top dog villain. He's not like Joker or Bane or like a top tier villain, but actually a villain who feels deeply emasculated, having never lived up to the legacy of his father and is trying to prove himself. But to do so, he tries to exert control over the smallest things that he has control over, such as his club and especially the women in his life. From Harley Quinn to his driver Black Canary to even, in one of the film's most uncomfortable but entirely truthful scenes, a female bar patron. And I will say that on a surface level, without analyzing the clearly unintentional but still there queer coding being used to highlight a man's emasculation and femininity as a negative thing, I did absolutely love Zsasz and Black Mask's clearly intentional homosexual relationship in this film. This is a film about toxic masculinity, and about how men who feel inadequate and inept lash out at anything feminine in an attempt to assert their masculinity, to prove it to themselves. Yet, at least for me, in my eyes, it does so with such rich characterization and deftness that it never feels like it's being performative or preachy. Yet, it's never unsubtle either. It's an incredibly fine line to walk, especially in today's era where everything feels so over the top and politicized. But this film does it incredibly. And that goes for the entirety of the film's feminist themes. The film showcases numerous women dealing with very real problems, such as a man taking credit for their work, or men taking advantage of drunk women, or abusive relationships, or a boss requiring validation through a woman's endless loyalty. One of my personal favorite moments showcasing this is a moment where Black Mask slaps Harley Quinn, and then she goes into a fantasy world with a full-on musical number, discussing how Harley Quinn still has feelings for the Joker even though he abused her, and actually the fact that Black Mask was hitting her brought back for her positive memories of her relationship with the Joker, showing how deep and twisted abusive relationships can go. It's honestly a really deep discussion showing how abusive relationships can feel comfortable and safe even in their toxicity to women who have been in them for so long that they don't know how to define themselves outside of it. Yet again, this film never stops to look at the camera and go, "Hey, men suck, right?" It never feels like faux feminist films like Marvel, where the women superheroes often feel like action figures at times used to sell a narrative that, hey look, we included women too, and they beat up a guy, so look how feminist we are. This is a film that just gives us real women dealing with real problems, albeit in a heightened comic booky way. And it also showcases how these women are also flawed. Harley Quinn may have been abused, yet she is still imperfect herself. She's clearly a villain, and the film never shies away from the fact that she is a bad person. And she pines after the Joker, and makes mistakes in how to handle situations that she's in. The same goes for the other Birds of Prey, who are all flawed people trying their best to deal with unfair situations that often, but not always, stem from their place in society due to their gender. This is how you do a feminist film without screaming about how feminist your film is. And this isn't me caving to the toxic fanboys who whine about every film that has women in it being somehow woke culture and like, oh look, they're saying men are bad because look, a woman actually had a place in a movie. Women should be allowed to be in things. But we should also critique companies like Disney when they only showcase the barest of safe feminist themes because it's marketable. And I'm also not saying that Harley Quinn is somehow the peak in feminist filmmaking. but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for big budget superhero films. This isn't me trying to say that we need to make feminism marketable, that we need to make the marketable feminist. And as a result, despite this being a totally insane film, this is perhaps the DC Comics franchise's most grounded film since The Dark Knight Rises. Not only because its themes feel so relatable and small scale compared to the operatic stories of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, but also because the stakes feel small too. It's ultimately a heist movie that, even if the main heroes fail, the big bad villain isn't all that big a fish anyways. And that's perfectly okay because this is a film about finding yourself, defining yourself. And we don't need a beam to the sky or world-ending threats to get us there. Something that I wish Suicide Squad had understood. All this, and I haven't even mentioned the film's amazing action set pieces. Unlike other superhero films where the action can tend to get very samey throughout, each and every action scene in this film brings something completely new to the table, and it's honestly a visual feast for the eyes. It's a pop art festive glitter bomb explosion of creative ideas, with each set piece feeling unique and yet fully cohesive. Every time an action scene came up, I got incredibly excited, and this may be my favorite action in any superhero movie ever. Unless, of course, you count John Wick as a superhero movie, which, okay, I guess I kinda do. Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, or The Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, honestly, both versions of the title are really clunky, is a flawed film. It has too much narration at times, and the non-linear structure, while showcasing Harley's fractured mental landscape, can get a tad overindulgent at times. And there are some bigger problems within the film that I've alluded to, that even some in my comments on my channel have discussed, such as the aforementioned queer coding of an emasculated man implying gay men are somehow less masculine, as well as the problematic depiction of neurodivergency inherent in Harley Quinn as a character in every form that she has taken in comics, TV shows, and movies. Or the fact that people of color are framed as the fun sidekicks to a white woman lead. All of these problems are very much there. And while I do wish to analyze the queer coding within this film once it comes out on DVD and I'm actually able to analyze it a little bit more thoroughly, I will say that many people of color have had a lot of disparate thoughts on this film, some people condemning it, some people praising it. And I don't think that I, as a white person, have the right to say anything specific on that front, but I will say that you should go and check out those voices from that community and their thoughts on this film, because I really think it's worthwhile to dive into how this film depicts people of color. So check out the links in the description below for some articles from people of color on this film. What I can say is this film really spoke to me and meant a lot to me, and I'm just so excited and so happy that it exists. It may not be perfect, it most certainly is not perfect, and I think it's worth analyzing that, especially from communities more marginalized than myself. But I also have to be true to the fact that this film really means a lot to me, and I am very excited about it. But I also think that Birds of Prey, while flawed, also goes much further in investigating the male domination of superherodom and women's roles in society that pretty much every other superhero film to date, including the OK Captain Marvel and the phenomenal Wonder Woman, completely ignored. And honestly, recognizing your flaws and yet still trying to stand out from the crowd is what Harley Quinn has always been about. Again, I don't want to diminish these issues that are in this film, but I do think it's a larger conversation about superhero and blockbuster films in general. But in the end, you owe it to yourself to see this truly unique and wonderful superhero movie, if you like superhero movies at all. Hell, if you can't get to the theater, go and buy like 20 tickets online right now, because I just really want to have another one of these so badly. And I just hope that Warner Brothers realizes what a special film they have on their hands, even if the domestic box office doesn't show it. I'm a huge DC Comics fan. I've quite literally seen every single DC movie ever made. From Steel to Lego Batman Beleaguered to The Dark Knight Returns to Assault on Arkham to Wonder Woman. And I gotta say, this is one of my favorite, if not my absolute favorite DC Comics film outside of maybe The Dark Knight. So please, for the love of God, go see it in theaters. Also, while I have you, please go watch Harley Quinn the Animated Series. It's honestly the best animated superhero show ever made besides possibly Young Justice. And I say that fully aware that Batman the Animated Series exists. Oh, I just killed my comment section, didn't I? Alright, that's it for this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please, I know that some of the things that I may have said may be contentious, and if you disagree with me, I definitely want to hear that because I want this to be an open discussion about the issues in this film. But I'd love to hear all comments about this film, whether you loved it, whether you hated it, whether you had other ideas on it. Let me know all that in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos like this or on Star Trek or things like that, please subscribe to this channel. And if you want to help make these videos even better, please consider giving to my Patreon page. Every little bit helps me pay the bills, helps me pay for an upcoming surgery that I have, and many other things. But regardless of if you subscribe or give to my Patreon, I'm losing my voice right now. I hope that you always live long and prosper. And special thanks to my commander level and above Patreons, Stefan Schuhart, BBD, Boyd and Marybeth Earl, Michael McGee, Lal Lindley, Wellington Marcus, Munir Amlani, Mari Neckar, and Marika Kuyechin.